The Wall Street Journal editorial board has been whining about what they're referring to as progressive cancel culture after staff members from the Wall Street Journal, which of course includes reporters, just asked for them to do some fact checking before publishing op-eds. Now, I don't think that's cancel culture, but if the Wall Street Journal editorial board thinks that fact checking is closely aligned to progressivism, I agree with them on that. I definitely agree with them on that. So let me give you the details on what happened and how the Wall Street Journal editorial board reacted to it. So this week, over 280 journalists, editors, and other employees at the Journal wrote a letter to their publisher expressing concern over misinformation published in the opinion section. In a response, the board dismissed those concerns as cancel culture. Now, let me be clear, no one's asking for anyone to be canceled. They're just asking for fact checking to ensure that misinformation isn't published on the editorial page. But the Wall Street Journal editorial staff is not receptive to that. The editorial board responded by saying, our opinion pages offer an alternative to the uniform progressive views that dominate nearly all of today's media. The opinion pages will continue to publish contributors who speak their minds within the tradition of vigorous, reasoned discourse. Now, what does that vigorous, reasoned discourse entail? What have they published, and why are these 280 journalists, editors, and other employees at the Wall Street Journal upset about how they've been conducting business over at the editorial page? Well, such panic is overblown. This is something that Mike Pence published during the pandemic. Such panic is overblown. Thanks to the leadership of President Trump and the courage and compassion of the American people, our public health system is far stronger than it was 4 months ago, and we are winning the fight against the invisible enemy. We've slowed the spread, we've cared for the most vulnerable, we've saved lives, and we've created a solid foundation for whatever challenge we may face in the future. And in that op-ed, Mike Pence argued that there would not be a second wave of coronavirus. Now, of course, anyone who knows even a little bit of what's been going on during this pandemic knows that there's been an absolute lack of leadership from the Trump administration. There's been nothing but utter incompetence. I mean, you have Trump suggesting that people inject themselves with disinfectant. So, I mean, fact checking wouldn't be that difficult in this case. But editorial boards like to serve as stenographers for the powerful. And that's exactly what they did in the case of this particular op-ed. No one's saying that Pence shouldn't ever be able to publish an op-ed. But the question is, do you just allow him to publish any lie in these editorial pages? And the editorial board for the Wall Street Journal says yes.
Yeah, look, I'm a little bit more mixed on this, so let me explain why. First, and by mixed, I don't mean I agree with the editorial board. I mean mixed. So first of all, they had to issue a correction on facts in the Pence editorial. Even the opinion section did. So obviously there was not enough fact checking there by definition. So you can't complain about that and call that cancel culture. No, you got the facts wrong there. Now, by the way, just a fact of life about power and media. So I've had a couple of op-eds published in the Wall Street Journal. And by the way, they're ironically more open to progressive op-eds than the New York Times is. But they meticulously fact checked mine. My guess is they were not quite as meticulous with Vice President Pence. And the reality is it should be the opposite. It should be even more careful with the powerful and people who are in charge of the government. So on that, I agree with the letter writers completely. On the issue of like, they say, well, he said the virus was gonna get better, and that's, as Biden would put, obvious malarkey, right? I agree that it's obvious malarkey. I don't know why I'm using that word all of a sudden. But that's like his opinion, man. And they say, oh, we handled this virus great. No, you didn't. You were an absolute disaster. But it's not the job of the editorial board to say, I disagree with your opinion that you handled it well. That's the point of an opinion page. He gets to write his opinion. Now, the letter also criticized them for running an op-ed called "The Myth of Systemic Police Racism." Now, that's an op-ed that I disagree with 100%. But the writers of the letter said, the writer of that op-ed did cherry picking on the facts. Yes, that's true, and that's why I disagree with her. But that's what op-ed writers do a lot of times. They don't present all the facts, they present the facts that are more amenable to their own case. On that logic, we'd cancel all op-eds. I mean, did the progressives who write op-eds write every single fact about every single issue? No, you're very limited in space. Conservatives get to make their opinions heard, and we get to make our opinions heard. Now I'm going to go back to disagreeing with the editorial board. They seem kind of hurt by this, and they're playing the victim role here. But wait a minute, your reporters are calling out things that you got wrong on the opinion page. That's their job, and that's more speech, not less speech. That's not cancel culture. That's just called dialogue, discourse, and what we're supposed to have in this country and what we're supposed to have in the papers, free speech.
Yeah, look, I think your assessment is mostly right. I think that there is a double standard when it comes to people in positions of power. I would argue that a major newspaper should actually be a little more vigorous with fact checking when it comes to people in positions of power, because clearly they have an incentive and a reason for what they're publishing. Oftentimes it's nothing more than a PR move. So does the editorial board feel comfortable serving as nothing more than stenographers for the powerful? I know that I would feel icky doing that. And also this notion that the media is overwhelmingly progressive. Are you kidding me? Have you seen the treatment of progressive candidates by mainstream media outlets? You think they've been friendly? You think the media is progressive? I mean, it's just nonsense. So everyone's operating in their own fantasy world, right? And it just blows my mind that the editorial board for the Wall Street Journal can say that with a straight face. This is not a story about cancel culture. This is a story about doing better and holding your colleagues at a higher standard. I have no doubt in my mind that if TYT put out a video that was full of all sorts of misinformation, I would definitely speak out, but I wouldn't speak out because I want one of my colleagues to get canceled. I would want them to make the correction, and that's exactly what's being asked of the editorial board here. But the editorial board can't handle it. Seems like they need a little bit of a safe space because they don't want to admit that they would publish nonsense.
As I explained just a minute ago, I largely agree. But I do want to point out one portion of the letter that I don't agree with. And this, I don't know if people find it controversial. I'm sure that'd be the first time in the Young Turks. But some of the journalist wrote to the op-ed page, employees of color publicly spoke out about the pain this opinion piece caused them during company-held discussions surrounding diversity initiatives. And if the company is serious about better supporting its employees of color, at a bare minimum, it should raise opinion standards so that misinformation about racism isn't published. Look, I think that op-ed they published was trash, and I don't agree with any of it. But I get that they're allowed to publish it, and so people saying my feelings are hurt about it, and so you shouldn't have published it. I don't agree with that. Look, I come from a Muslim background. You have how many op-eds and books and reports have been written about how Muslims are irredeemable and all they understand is violence, and we have to attack one Muslim country after another after another. I could cancel almost all of media on that alone, okay? But no, Dick Cheney gets to make an argument about attacking Iraq, and we get to make the opposite argument. The problem wasn't that. The problem was that nobody made the opposite argument. And a lot of the media went along with what the demagoguery of Dick Cheney, et cetera, there. I only wish we had a situation where both sides could have spoken out against the bigotry of Muslims in this country. And I think now we're close to that position. But I don't want the pendulum to swing so much that you say, no, you're not allowed to write articles about Muslims if it's gonna offend me. You're not allowed to write articles about atheists if it's gonna offend me. No, you write an article correcting their facts and putting them in the proper context, and then demand that they run an op-ed that is progressive, that challenges that op-ed. And so more speech, not less speech.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR, so those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.